to help you with this project? Is it going to be your friends, family member, a group of people, whatever. Second thing is, what do you like to eat? So you want to think about the veggies that you really love to eat, that you really love to enjoy, and then you're going to want to, learn, of course, how they grow and what season is best for those. And then how are you going to use all of this? So oftentimes, I guess on the successful side of gardening, a lot of people that I know will say, yeah, I planted, some tomatoes last year, but I just had so many, I had to throw them away or I had to give them away. I just had too much. So you also don't want to plant so much food where, it just goes to waste. So you want to keep in mind how much you're growing. So it's, it's easy to manage, right? So probably the first thing you should consider before vegetable gardening is location, right? So in real estate, location, location, location. It's all about where is, that thing going to be located at, because this is going to kind of determine how successful you are. So when you're picking out your location for your garden, first off, you want to make sure that it gets about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. So in this picture on the right, this is a picture of, someone has a beautiful lawn, it's real manicured. They got a tree in the middle of it, but you'll notice that a lot of this area is covered in shade. So if you're, looking out onto your property or your yard or wherever you're going to put your garden, and you notice that it's always in the shade or in the shade for most of the day, then, you're definitely not going to want to put a garden there. And then also, this is a problem that I hear a lot too, is, people want to have vegetable gardens, but sometimes it's far away from like the water hose or the water spout. So you want to make sure it's close to a water source so you can just easily, water it. So the more convenient the garden is, the better chance is that you're going to be successful at it. So there's several pretty much main systems that you're going to want to look at for gardening. So raised beds are pretty popular, I would say, pretty easy to purchase these in the store or build them. So probably one of the most common ones you're going to see are these wooden raised beds. So a raised bed, you can make them higher up. You can make them low to the ground. You can, make them long or short or square or rectangle. So it's super flexible on what you want to do with these. These are often like a really easy way to start your garden as well. And then you have container gardening, right? So this person, I thought this was interesting. They just have some, some 5-gallon buckets and that they turn into a whole garden right here in their backyard. So if you have some pots or some type of containers that you can use, you can also use those to start a vegetable garden. And then you have your more traditional system, just in the ground. So if you have a clear space on your property, in your backyard or whatever, you can definitely start that garden in the ground as well. So now you got your location down, you've hopefully sat down and planned out what you want to do. So the other thing to remember is the soil, I call it the life of the party. So if you have good soil, you have a great foundation for a successful garden. So it pretty much starts with the location. And then the second thing is starts with the soil. So one thing you want to look out for with your soil is how well does your soil drain. So if you're looking at an in-ground garden on your property, you're going to want to wait until the next time it rains, if you haven't noticed this before, and just see where water goes, where water sits at in your yard. Because if water likes to sit in a certain spot for an extended period of time, that means that soil is not draining well, and you might want to move to another location. And then sometimes you'll need to prepare the soil. So this is another in-ground situation. So they just have a lawn in the backyard. So you can use something like a tiller to start breaking up the soil to get rid of that top layer of vegetation. You can mix in some different soil amendments as well, like compost or leaves, fertilizer, manure, things like that to help build that soil quality. And pretty much the easiest way to build your soil quality is going to be by adding some organic matter. So again, this is compost. We can see that here in this leftmost picture. In the middle, you can see some leaves, fall leaves, tree leaves, cuttings from shrubs, things like that. All that stuff makes a really good organic matter material for your soil, and then animal manure. And then also here at my office or at any UGA extension office in the state, you can get your soil tested. So at my office, it's just $10 per sample. And what this test will show you is it's going to basically show you the general nutrient levels of your soil. So it'll tell you how much fertilizer you need to add. And then it's also going to tell you the pH. So at a vegetable gardening, you want your pH or the acidity or how acidic or how alkaline the soil is. That's what your pH is. You want that to be between 6 and 7. So with this $10 soil test, at a glance, you can just really get to the bottom of the basic things you need to add to your soil to help it be more productive. So with fertilizer, going back to the nutrient part, so we can pretty much customize these recommendations, but it may say, add, 5 pounds of fertilizer to the garden. So in general, your fertilizer is going to be in a granular form or a liquid form. And in the granular forms, you're really just going to want to broadcast that evenly around the area. Or you can use a technique called banding. It's where you spread it out in a row right next to the crops. But in general, the fertilizer amount is going to depend on your soil report. So it's not going to be exact for every single thing. But some other fertilizer products you can use, you have things like bone meal or blood meal, things like that. And these will contain varying amounts of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which are the key nutrients that your crops are going to need to grow. And then here's just a better picture of what the pH scale looks like. So for your veggies, you're going to want to be in that 6 to 7 range for those veggies. So, if you get your soil tested, for example, if your soil test said, that your pH was, a 2 for whatever reason, so that means your soil is super acidic. So in order for you to raise that pH up to that 6 to 7 level, you're going to need to add lime. So lime raises pH, and then sulfur lowers pH. So if your pH happened to be like a 8 or a 9 or a 10, you'd want to lower that some. But of course, changing the pH is not overnight thing. So this really just takes time. I think the time frame we use is about 6 months. So it's really best if you get your soil tested early. Maybe you want to do it in the fall, or you want to do it in the spring for a fall garden. You want to, in general, get it tested early so you can give these products time to work and change that pH. And then you have tillage. We talked about that. All right, so yeah, planting crops. So now that we have our location, you figured out you want to buy some raised beds, or you want to, use the ground or whatever. Now we can get on to the planting part. So in a minute, if they haven't already, your local garden store is going to start putting out all these different vegetable crops, right? So if you go to the store, they're going to have a decent amount of varieties that you can choose from. as far as, tomatoes and peppers and collard greens, things like that. So you're going to have, a decent amount of choices. So we actually have this really handy vegetable planting chart though. So again, if you would like a copy of this, you can just email me after the presentation and I'll send it to you. But on our vegetable planting chart, it'll list the vegetable here, give you the general days to maturity or days to when they're ready to harvest. Then it lists some recommended cultivars for Georgia or Southeast, and then some general planting dates. So right now, today is February 22nd. So we're entering kind of the spring phase of gardening. So, you want to, for example, if you wanted to plant broccoli, according to our chart, you'd have till about March 15th be the recommended time to go ahead and put out your broccoli in that spring season. So this is a really handy chart that you can use to browse the different veggies and planting times and cultivars. So you'll have two different options for planting crops right now, or anytime in general. So you're either going to plant your crops from seeds, or you're going to plant them from transplants or plugs, or whatever you want to call them, seedlings. So with seeds, of course, you're going to have a slower start. So, if you don't want to wait until the stores stock up the seedlings, you're going to be starting all the way from the very beginning with a seed. But seeds are also a lot cheaper, right? Because, you can buy like a $2 or $3 seed packet of collards, and, there could be 50 or 100 collard seeds in there, versus if you bought 50 to 100 collard plants, that would be 10 times more expensive pretty much. But the thing I like about seeds is you have a lot more variety to choose from. So today I was looking at some different varieties of different crops, and this is what I found. So these aren't I guess these aren't what your typical crops would look like in the store or in a general garden, probably. So for the spring, these are all spring crops. So in our top left corner, we have golden beets. So these beets are, a beautiful yellowish golden color, definitely on the flesh. But in general, if you go to the store, we're pretty much used to seeing red beets. Then in the middle, this is a different variety of lettuce. So, it's not just green, but it has, that really nice kind of burgundy color on the leaves. So that can really liven up a salad, for example. And then on this top right corner, this is called Romanesco Broccoli. So this looks, just so out of the ordinary to me, but this is actually a variety of broccoli. But it looks, pretty cool. It has a bright lime green color. Then in the bottom left, that is purple cauliflower. And then in the bottom middle, you have white carrots, not your regular orange ones, but, all white carrots. And then this bottom right one, this last one here, this is actually a radish. So on the outside, it looks like a lime, but it's actually a radish plant. So it has that green lime color on the outside and the red flesh on the inside. So I just, found these just to reiterate that, if you want to experiment with some of your veggies, go ahead and find some seeds so you can give yourself more options, just so you can grow some different things that are out of the ordinary. And we have a great publication that'll give you the step-by-step guide on how to start seeds indoors, so you can make your own seedlings for planting. So if you like that as well, you can definitely email me and I'll send that to you. So then now we have our transplants. So these are what you're going to see in your garden store pretty soon. So of course you get faster results. The plants are already, grown partially for you. So all you have to do really is take them out of these pots and put them, in your container or the ground. But the only downsides are, they're going to be more expensive, probably $4 or $5, $6 each per tray. And then, of course, you're going to have less variety because the store can only have so many tomatoes, available to the public like that, right? So that's something to think about when you're planning out your garden. So another thing to think about, so making sure you're in the right season. So springtime gives you pretty much time for cooler season crops because it's not as hot, but you can also, of course, squeeze some warmer season crops in near the end of spring. But since we're talking about spring, your main cool season crops that you're probably gonna try out are gonna be your leafy greens, like collard greens, lettuce, spinach, broccoli, cabbage, mustard greens. So we're going to focus a lot on those. So in general, we're going to be looking at our cold crops. So broccoli, cauliflower. We have some Brussels sprouts on the left. Nice cabbage. And what was this? Forgot what these were. Kale, your root crops like your beets and your carrots, your radishes, onions, garlic, some radishes right here, and then your leafy greens like spinach, lettuce, arugula. So yeah, those are going to be your main cooler season crops. And for the leafy greens, found this cool video that pretty much sums up how you can easily harvest your leafy greens. It's called the cut and come again method. So I'll show this just so you can get an idea.
How do we take a field of lettuce, just like this, and turn it into a bowl of lettuce day after day for pretty much the entire year? We're going to use something called the cut and come again method, and there's 2 different ways to do it. We're going to talk about that in today's video. With cut and come again, what you're trying to do is preserve the growing tip of the plant. And for lettuce and many leafy greens, that is in the center, and we call it the crown. And so what you're seeing me do here with this bib lettuce, very standard, classic type of lettuce, is come around the outside. And you can do it clockwise, counterclockwise. But what you're trying to do here is take away those large, mature leaves. And I'm doing it here with this Merlot lettuce too, which is more of a frilly variety. This one I'm going to take down pretty considerably just to show you a peek at what the inside really looks like. Because if you do damage the crown, then your plant is done for good. And so you really want to avoid that. You're seeing me take away these outside leaves. And look, there's just very small versions of those leaves in here. So if we dig in, we can see the future of this plant, basically. These are 4, 5, maybe even 6 little leaves that are in development, and in 4 or 5 days you'll see those really start to come out. And so you can do this with something like spinach too. Come around, make sure that you're not chopping off that crown, get around the outside, and you're going to get a lot more yield out of this because you're taking off those mature leaves, letting them grow up, and then doing the same thing. So we can see here, crown is the exact same. Those baby lettuce leaves are coming out, those spinach leaves. And now here is a different method. This is a more efficient method. So you can come in with a chef's knife or something similar. Make sure you know right about where the crown is so you don't chop off too much of it. And then grab it like a head of hair almost, and then just come through and slice. And you're going to want a really sharp knife for this. And so you've got a nice bunch of lettuce. You've preserved the crown. We can see I didn't chop the crown off. And there we go. It's really that simple, guys. So the cut and come again method explained in about a minute or 2. Well, there we have it. The cut and come again method, very simple, explained. You can get bowls of lettuce day after day using this method as long as you're doing it the right way. But it does bring us to a couple questions. And the first question is, how many times can I actually cut one of these plants before it actually is just done for good? Which is a great question. So usually it really does depend on the type of plant, the type of lettuce or leafy green that you're doing. But for the most part, anywhere from 3 to 5 cuts, and that's about it. So, you know, it's not like the plant's just going to continue producing forever, like it might if you look at my basil video. I have a video on how to prune basil. You can more or less keep it going forever. Relatively speaking, it still will die, but much later than a green. For something like, you know, this loose leaf lettuce right here, you're going to get 3 to 5 cuts before the quality of the leaf is going to start to degrade. It won't be this big, and it also won't taste that good, and it's going to sort of be just a little bit uglier, and just the plant is trying to bolt because it knows that, you know, its life is coming to an end, but you're not really giving it the energy and the ability to do so. So then you're in a bad spot. So that's it. Endless supply of lettuce. I'm gonna go.
All right. So now we're going to talk about our competition, as I like to call them. So just like you and me, we love our fresh veggies. You know, we put a lot of hard work and time into it. There are going to be different pests out there in the environment that also enjoy fresh veggies. And I always like to use this picture here because it looks like this caterpillar was like making a face in this tomato. So remember, you're going to have competition. So in my job, you know, you can actually call me or email me, send me pictures of different pests that you see in your garden or in your landscape, and I can help you identify them and tell you what you can do to control them. But oftentimes people will call me and they say, you know, I have this, you know, thingamajig, whatchamacallit thing, and it has black spots on it and it has red teeth. They just, you know, kind of describe it. And then they ask me, you know, well, what should I spray to get rid of it? So with that, you know, the most important thing in pest control is being able to properly identify what the pest is, because you could have, you know, aphid problem, but you're describing, you know, a butterfly to me, and then, you know, I can't go off that alone. I have to know, or we have to know what exactly the pest is, so you can use the proper control methods. So the strategy we use for that is called IPM, or it's integrated pest management. So the answer to pest control isn't just, you know, what do I spray or what pesticide can I put on my plants? It's really using a combinations of strategies to control your pest problem. So in this picture here, I like to use this. We have a kitchen sink here that is full of a bunch of dirty dishes. So can anyone, you know, unmute yourself and tell me what type of pests you think this person is attracting by leaving their kitchen like this?
Roaches.
Roaches,
Yep, definitely roaches. Anything else?
rats,
Ants.
Ants, mice.
Water bugs.
Yep.
Fruit
Yep.
flies.
Everyone's yelling out, you know, all these different pests, right? So looking
And
at
sloppy teenagers.
Yep. Yep. So looking at this picture here, you know, you can't call your local extension agent, your neighbor, and say, hey, what can I spray on my kitchen dishes because I have a bunch of roaches in my house, right? In this situation, it's not going to matter what you spray because you have created an environment that is perfect for the pest to be there. So that's why the number one strategy for IPM, or integrated pest management, is prevention. So by keeping your kitchen clean, or in this instance, your garden clean, and we'll talk about that later, you can prevent a pest problem just by doing that one thing. So you don't even have to worry about what can I spray, or, you know, what can I buy from the store to get rid of it. So I want you to have that same mindset about your vegetable garden as well. So one of the things you can do with prevention as far as that is, so when you go out after this program, hopefully you're super motivated to get out there and start growing. You go to your local garden store and you start looking at those transplants they have in the store. So you're going to want to really examine the plants that you're picking up to make sure they don't already have a pest problem. Because if you buy, you know, a flat of collard greens and they already have, you know, white flies or aphids all over them, and then you bring them home to your garden, you just created your pest problem simply by bringing them home with you, right? So keep that in mind when you're buying your veggie plants. So then once you have your plants growing, you're going to want to do some scouting. So, vegetable gardens, they, to a sense, they take care of themselves, but they need a lot of supervision, like kids. So you're going to want to be looking at these plants, on the top side of the leaves, underside of the leaves, on the stems, near the base of the plant. You're going to want to be constantly looking at these plants to make sure they're doing all right. And the reason I have that picture there of me flipping that leaf is you have some two common pests that you'll see definitely in spring, aphids and whiteflies, and these pests like to hang out on the underside of the leaves. So if you're just, walking through your garden and you have that top-down view, everything looks fine. But in the meantime, you could have, 50 aphids or whiteflies right there on the underside of the leaf. So make sure you're looking out for that. So watering, this is a kind of a common problem. So of course, on the left, we have our gardener there. They're watering their greens with the hose, but they're wetting the leaves from the top down. So after they're done, these leaves are all going to be pretty wet. So you can really help minimize disease pressure, disease pests, by directing the water to the root zone and not on the leaves. Now, of course, it's gonna, rain from time to time, but in general, you wanna do what you can do to keep the leaves dry. So it's often recommended that you use like drip irrigation, for example, since that directs that water towards the root zone. Or if you just have a hose, you want to direct that water yourself towards the root zone. And then harvesting on time. So this picture is a picture of, I think this was a collard plant in the middle, but you notice that there's also tomatoes on the ground. So tomatoes and collards aren't typically grown together in the same season because tomatoes are more of a warm season crop. Collards and cabbage, leafy greens, that's more of a cool season crop. So this picture was taken in the summertime. So this collard plant was here since the spring, and this is deep in the summer. So by leaving your plants out, longer than they should be out, that also gives an opportunity for pests to kind of settle in because you're providing them with extra food, and then these plants are also breaking down and decomposing. So making sure you're harvesting your crops on time as well. And then spacing is important. So this is a jungle of tomatoes, basically. So these tomatoes are all intermingled and intertwined together. So with this, once one tomato plant starts suffering from an insect pest or a disease pest, it can more easily be spread throughout this whole area because everything is so clustered together. So keeping in mind when you're planting your crops, you want to make sure that you give them enough space, of course, to grow, and you're giving space for air circulation and ventilation so they can dry properly. So actually on that chart that I showed you all earlier, there's actually recommended spacings for those crops as well. So weeds are really, I guess, in general, pretty difficult to fight if you don't stay on top of it. So here's a picture of weeds that are really small. So, and we'll just use this as an example. So this is hopefully going to be what your vegetable garden looks like. And you have small weeds on the ground. So weeds are easiest to control when they're small. So then, if let's say you go on some type of vacation, or you just forget about your garden for a week, you can come back and before you know it, the weeds are looking you in the face, right? So at this point, when when the weeds are really big, really large are taking over, it's going to be a lot harder for you to, number one, even find, a weed killer or herbicide to spray. And then it's definitely going to be a lot harder for you to hand pull them or remove them physically. So with the weeds, you want to make sure that you stay on top of this, start early when they're small. You can do hand pulling. You can use a mower if that's a option. Mulching works great. So we have 4 different pictures of different types of mulches that you can use to help keep the weeds down. Pine straw, newspaper, wood chips, things like that. So here's a picture of a vegetable garden, and you can see that they have a pretty significant weed problem. And then you see this here. So the mulch in this instance really helped out with the coverage. And of course you have tillage. It can also help as well. Then you have your mechanical strategies, which is basically physical barriers that you can use to keep pests out, or you can use hand pulling techniques if you see, bugs on your crops as well. So then you have your cultural strategies. So you never want to plant the same vegetable crop in the same place over and over again. So here you have a nice little flow chart to follow. So in your garden, if you planted some root crops like carrots or beets or something like that, next year you're going to want to switch to another type of crop like fruit crop, leaf crop, legume crop. So just make sure you're rotating the types of crops that you're using in the garden. So adding some color. So, excuse me. So adding some color. So when we think about a vegetable garden, I would think, in general, you're mainly just thinking about what you're going to eat, but you also want to think about adding some flowers to the garden, because flowers are going to add variety to the garden. They help attract beneficial insects like butterflies and bees and other insects that target the bad bugs that can damage your crops. So these are some of my personal favorite flowers to plant. So I love to plant cosmos flowers, zinnias, cone flowers, black-eyed Susans, asters. So all these different flowers are awesome for pollinator and awesome for beneficials in general. And definitely, in addition to flowers, you want to throw in some herbs in there too. So add some spice. So some great ones you can use: rosemary, oregano. So overall, you want your garden to look something like this. It shouldn't just be, you have 10 collards, 10 lettuces, 10 spinach, and then soil. You want to have a variety of these different things to help attract beneficial insects to your garden that are really going to help with its production. So this brings me to biological control. So this is natural control in the environment that already occurs. So these are natural enemies of the bad pests like parasites, predatory insects, parasitoid wasp. Ladybugs are extremely beneficial because they love to eat aphids. So by using, these different things in your garden, planting herbs, planting flowers, you will help to attract beneficial insects like these. So this is, I guess, the coolest example that I can find to me of biological control. So this green caterpillar is called a tomato hornworm. So these like to attack plants like tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. So here is it's pictured of an infected tomato hornworm. So a parasitoid wasp, well, there's a specific parasitoid wasp that targets these hornworms and pretty much um, plants its babies into the hornworm. Those babies basically eat the worm from the inside out. They form these cocoons on the outside, and then by the time they start hatching, this worm is dead. So there's actually a video here showing you of this natural process. And this parasitoid wasp and other beneficial insects, these types of beneficial, or what I'm talking about, these are the type of insects that are attracted to a garden with different flowers and different herbs and different plants that create an environment for them to also exist. So let's watch. Yeah, so at this point, these baby parasitoid wasps are growing inside of this caterpillar. They're pretty much eating it from the inside, and then they're about to create their cocoons. Yeah, so at this point, the wasps have emerged from these cocoons, and they will continue this same process again to another caterpillar. So this is just a really cool example of how there are also natural bugs and organisms out there that will help control pests in your garden as well. So now we're on to the last resort. So now these are our pesticides or our chemical products. So these should always be last on your list. You have organic options and more conventional options, but with pesticides, there's no one universal pesticide that you can use to control every single insect or disease in your garden, right? Each one's designed for a specific pest or group of pests. And usually the most important thing I tell people to remember about pesticides is making sure you read the label. So, now we're in a society where, we're really used to scrolling. We scroll on our phones, on our touchscreen computers, tablets, things like that. A lot of times we're kind of skimming information, but you really want to make sure that you read the label of any pesticide that you use, especially one that you spray, on your food. So you'll often find this on pesticide labels saying, it's a violation of federal law to use this product in a manner inconsistent with its labeling. Meaning if it's labeled for, a vegetable garden and it's labeled to kill aphids or whatever, that's what it's labeled for, not to use it, in your house to kill ants or something like that. So just keep that in mind. So I guess, the first example I thought of with reading a label is with mothballs. So at least a lot in my job, I'll usually get a few calls a year saying, I have a snake problem around my house, can I put some mothballs out? And, you know, I always tell them the answer is no, because mothballs aren't labeled for, you know, snake control, right? They're labeled to kill cloth moths, eggs and larvae in airtight containers and storage closets. So by not reading the label or by using pesticides off label, then you increase your risk of, you know, harm to yourself from the environment, things like that. So then you got your home brews. So we don't recommend home brews because we only recommend products that have been researched to definitely control the pests. So home brews, you know, your results may vary. So I just put this stuff up here because, you know, I know a lot of people talk about things like hot sauce and garlic and things like that. They make their own solutions for pests. Generally, we don't recommend this, and, you know, you should try to avoid this in most cases. So repellents, so deer may be a problem for a vegetable garden for sure. You know, they love to eat all these great things we like to grow. So with repellents, your results are going to vary in general, but with deer control, we usually recommend that you just put up some type of physical barrier like a fence or like the cages that we saw earlier to physically prevent the deer from being able to get close enough to eat your crop. So in summary, for successful vegetable gardening, you want to make sure that you find a good location. You want to have good soil, manage your work and your time and your resources. Make sure you're checking up on the garden regularly, and then of course, ask for help. So I'm definitely here to help everyone. And if you would like me to email you that vegetable planting chart or that seed starting publication or any other gardening information, you can send me an email as it's pictured here. You can give me a call in my office, but email works great. And then if there are other topics that you all are interested in learning more about, you can put those in the chat box as well. And I will put that on my program list so we can create some more programs that meet your needs. And lastly, I just have a poll here for you for an evaluation on the screen, and then we can answer some questions. All right, poll should be on the screen now. All right, so I'm gonna go in the chat, see if anyone has any questions, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question if you would like.
Brandon?
Yes.
Hey, thank you for this class. My name is Susan Bondurant, and my question is about rainwater retaining or retention.
Okay.
Will you be doing something on that, that we could use the rainwater to water our gardens if we don't have access to a garden hose close by?
Definitely. I'm planning a rainwater program for the summertime. So you'll probably see that in probably in June or July. But that will be posted on our Eventbrite page for you to register for.
I have enough rainwater in my yard now for all of you.
Yeah, but that's definitely an important topic to try to see how we can use that for watering our gardens.
Hi, this is Mary. I was wondering, is it possible to view the recording again? View the recording.
Yep, so I have recorded this meeting and I will upload it to our YouTube channel. So our YouTube is just UGA extension Clayton County. So I can put that in the chat. So if you go on YouTube and put that in, you can see all the recordings of all the classes that we're doing.
Hi, this is Ida, and I'm having problems with ants. It just seems like every chance they're there. So what's your solution?
Yeah, so you're having problems with them in your vegetable garden every year, I guess?
Correct.
Yeah, so yeah, ants are tricky. So with ants in general, well, do you know if they're fire ants or anything, or they're just like, I guess, black ants?
They're black ants.
Okay. Yeah, so in general with the ants, and I can, if you shoot me an email, I can give you like more in-depth information about it. But in general, with the ants, you can use different bait products, for example, in your actual landscape to help keep those ant populations down.
Okay.
I can't recall of the garden products that you can use, but they do have specific products labeled for the vegetable garden to help with ants. But in general, you're gonna have to just really decrease the overall population in that area because ants are like, they can just take over really quickly. But if you
Oh,
send
and
me,
they do.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So they're real difficult to control. But I can send you a publication we have specifically on ants if you just send
Okay.
me an email about it.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much for this. I had difficulty getting on. I'm not sure if anyone else had trouble, but I'll also email you regarding the handout. And thank you.
Okay. Yep, and
I
this
had
is
trouble getting
recorded,
on,
so it will be on our YouTube channel.
Brandon, I had trouble getting in too. I had to try
Me
many
too.
times.
Yeah, I did too.
What
I did too.
what problem were
Brandon,
y'all looking at when you first tried to log into the Zoom?
Well, Zoom didn't give me a link to you at first. It said go to the event
Right.
page. And when I went
Right.
to the event page, it was like, well, okay, go
Register.
to the view the class, but then it wouldn't allow me to go to the link in order to get to the class. So it was like a round robin. Every time I would do that, then I had to start.
Right. Right.
Needed to be registered through Eventbrite.
Well, I did
Right.
registered, and it still didn't allow me to get there.
Correct. That's
A
true.
little thing between the two
Set up a
windows.
password.
Yeah, it wasn't
Right.
it wasn't obvious what the link was. We
Right.
randomly
Right.
clicked on something and we got in.
Right.
All right. For the next class, I'll look at our system to make sure it sends you all the direct link in that message, or I'll try to figure out, I guess, a more clearer way for you all to get it. I don't want you to have trouble to get into the class.
It was just the one line between the two pictures of your co-op or whatever you call it, the extension. And it was just not obvious that was where you were supposed to click.
Right.
Okay.
After you went around and around.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry about that, but we'll work on that for the next one. So
I
you
bet
all
you
can
there's
get in,
some
but I'm
people
glad
still
y'all
in the
made it
loop.
though.
Brandon, I have a suggestion on the ants. I don't know if this is okay, but I found that a slight dusting of talc-free baby powder on the ground, when I see the ants, they literally run for the hills. It's almost like they see me coming and they run. And then the other benefit I found when I move a potted plant, my dog loves grub worms.
Mm-hmm.
He like gets out there and helps me dig them up, and he eats them. It's like protein for him, and he loves them. It's like candy.
Well, he's controlling
But
the
the
worms
baby
for you.
powder works. Well, yeah, he eats them so they can't like produce and spread. But the baby powder works great for ants.
Yeah, I mean, I can't recommend, baby powder just because, it's not labeled for that, but, that more falls in the homebrew section. But, if that.
I know, but it works really good. That's why I say a light dusting, on food plants. I know you don't really want to put chemicals in the soil of your food, but if you've got flower plants, it doesn't affect them as far as I can tell. And then when you do have ants that want to come into your plant pots, put it on the ground around the pot itself to keep them from climbing up your pot into your plant.
Okay, cool.
Or around your dog's food and water bowls in the yard.
Mm-hmm. All
Hi,
right.
Brandon. I have a question. I've tried several companion planting. So with my tomatoes, I put garlic, I put marigolds, I put chamomilla, and I don't know if last year was a bad year for bugs, but they were eating even those things, like even chocolate mint, which I've planted for so many years, and I plant them between my tomatoes. It's supposed to, repel certain insects. Even those were being eaten up, and it's mint. So was it just a bad year last summer, or, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah, so with companion planting, it's not necessarily a guarantee that they will, repel, pests effectively. Because I know, like, for example, I know I was told that, you can plant marigolds around tomatoes to help with pests. So overall, they're not really going to, guarantee that they repel pests, but having a variety of those plants available is going to help attract beneficial insects to your garden. But they can't necessarily, control them on a scale that they're just going to prevent your plants from, being damaged. So you'll just have to, I still definitely recommend plant those different varieties of plants, but you're also, going to have to use these other strategies to help with that control, because, each part in that system of pest control plays a role, but no one part can just do it all.
Okay, thank you.
Brandon, I have a really quick question. We have a deer problem this year. We've never had deer like this. They've eaten all of my little buds off of my azaleas, and they've eaten my camellias this year too. Will my azaleas come back?
Yes, they should recover. I know the deer, I'm just imagining it in my mind on what it looks like. But yeah, the azaleas should recover from that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you for the class.
Thanks for attending.
Last year I tried, how can I put this? We don't have a drip system, but I had seen where they took like milk cartons and punched a couple of holes in the bottom and buried them between the plants.
Yep.
And that worked. I would water the ground first, and then I would fill those, and it's full sun all day long. And that worked quite well.
Yep, we've used that same strategy in school gardens, the old milk jug irrigation trick. Yeah, that does work pretty well, because it drains the water pretty slowly and you just refill it. So yeah, I definitely try that if someone needs kind of an irrigation solution.
My question is regarding, what do you call it? Vine borers are my biggest nightmare, and I've read that they overwinter. So I'm afraid that when I plant again this year, I'll have the same problem. Any suggestions for making sure I can cut down on those? They got in my pumpkins and zucchini mostly.
Yep, so vine borers will overwinter in the soil and then pop back up again next year, and they'll get you again. So with that, if you have a tiller or a shovel, I would go to that area where you planted all those kind of cucumber crops, and I would dig it up, mix up that soil, because you want to, basically you're aiming to kill them while they're in the ground. And then I would also avoid planting those same type of plants in that area as well, because you don't want the area to build up with that population. But the quick I guess solution would be to get a tiller and get in there and till up that soil so you can kill them that way.
They'll be visible. What will they look like after overwintering?
They'll probably be like in a white cocoon probably, but if you But if you've already tilled up that area, I mean, you probably, destroyed them at that point from the blade anyway. So you probably won't like see them, after you're done.
Okay, and what about the Mosaic virus? I had that on my cucumbers. That comes back as well?
I'm not sure about the virus, but I know once you, I guess, have confirmed that your plant has the virus, unfortunately there's nothing that you can do for that plant. It's best to just pull that plant up and destroy it.
And what about replanting in that area the next year?
I'd have to check on that to see how the virus dwells in one area. But I have your email, so I'll check on that. And I'll email that reply to you to see how it survives in the soil.
Okay,
but
thanks.
if you see it in your plants, you try to get rid of those plants as quick as possible.
Right, okay.
Excuse me, is there anything we can treat our soil with now before we start planting? Other than tilling? Well, insects. Okay, like I know I had a problem with cucumbers last year in one area, so I'm not going to plant cucumbers in that spot this year. But is there something I can add to the soil to amend the soil so that hopefully it will be better and will produce whatever I plant there?
Yeah, if you want to add compost to your soil right now, or you want to add some, leaves that you have in the yard. So one of those two things or both of those things, those will, always do the soil pretty good. So if you want to go ahead and add those in now, you definitely can.
Okay, and I noticed in the video you showed, he had hay rather than, he used that around his plants. Is that recommended?
Yeah, so you can use hay around your plants, but sometimes, depending on where you get the hay from, you're gonna want to check with that supplier, that farmer, and ask what they actually sprayed on it, because sometimes hay can still hold onto different herbicides that they use, and that can also damage your plants. So you just want to be careful about where you're getting your hay from. Just make sure you ask some questions first.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did you happen to mention how to get rid of the grub worms that are in the soil?
Yeah, we were talking about the squash
I can send my
vine
dog.
borer. What was that?
I can send my dog. You'll get
One of our
rid of the grub
participants
worm.
has their dog available for rent if you have a grub worm problem. But if not, usually tilling up the soil usually kills different insects like that as well.
How accurate are the over-the-counter soil testers?
I would say not as accurate as our lab. In general, they may, they'll give you an answer, but I'd definitely say that our soil test is going to be more accurate than over the counter ones.
Brandon, if we decide to have you test our soil, what do you recommend in terms of our entire garden area? Like I have a part in my yard, 40 feet by 60 feet I have available to plant in.
Yep.
And if I want to check my soil, do I need to check the soil? Like say I'm going to have a place for just blueberries, a place for just blackberries, a place for raised garden beds, and I'll probably use added soil in in all of the garden beds that I build. But in terms of having more than one thing growing in the ground, how many areas should we test our soil?
Yeah, so one soil sample can actually represent up to 15 acres. So for your one garden area, I would just recommend that you just do one sample. So what we recommend is that you pick at least 10 random spots in that area. So you go around to those 10 random spots and you dig about 6 to 8 inches down into the soil. and you take, a small shovel full of that one sample, put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and then go around to those nine or 10 other places, put it in the bucket, you mix all that up, and then you take one sample from that, and that's going to represent that whole area. So then when we get your soil sample, we can test your soil for an infinite amount of things. We can put a blueberry code on there, so it'll come back and say, this is what you need for blueberries. We can do a vegetable garden. We can do flowers, trees, whatever you want.
And how much of soil do you need for the sample itself?
So for one sample, probably bring in like 2 sandwich bags full, because the bag, well, I actually have a picture of the bag, because the bag isn't that big. So about 2 sandwich bags full, and then that's just $10 per sample.
Were you getting a picture?
Yes, ma'am. Let me see. It's right at the beginning here.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, our bag is, this gives you a better representation. It's really not that big. So we just put it in one of these brown bags and we send it off to our lab.
Okay. Do you supply those soil sample bags?
Yep, sure do. And you can come by our office and pick them up. You can take as many as you want for the future, or you can just, bring your soil and we'll put it in the bag for you.
Awesome. And what is your address, please?
It's 1262 Government Circle in
I think I know where you are.
Jonesboro, Georgia. I can put it in the chat here too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Brandon, for the class. It's awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll see you on the next one. The tree pruning.
Yep, fruit tree pruning on March 1st.
I got one last question for you. Regarding the rainbow, like 10, 15, 20 fertilizer, how long will it keep? I've had a bag now for a couple of years. It was such a big bag. I've just been using a little bit at a time.
I guess you've been keeping it like in a garage or something. I mean, if it's not like breaking down in the bag, or if there's no like extreme odor or anything coming from it, should be fine. Because I actually keep mine. I just keep it in a can in my garage, and I just use it slowly over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brandon, did you say we can get the recording? You said it's going to be on YouTube, correct?
Yep, I'm gonna upload it to our YouTube channel, and that's UGA Clayton County Extension on YouTube.
Okay, thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
You too. And again, if anyone wants the handouts I mentioned, you can send me an email and I will send those over to you. My email's in the chat and on the last slide of this presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for attending, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.